By shifting electric vehicle production overseas, Ford just ignited a firestorm, one that's threatening American jobs, angering investors, and putting the entire auto industry at risk. Was this a bold business move or the biggest mistake in Ford's history? With Trump already planning his counterattack and calls for a nationwide boycott growing, the fallout is just beginning. Is Ford's CEO playing a dangerous game that could cost the company everything? Let's break it down. What's happening? The auto industry has always been a pillar of American manufacturing, but Ford just made a move that could change everything. In a stunning decision, the company announced that it would shift a significant portion of its electric vehicle production overseas, sending shockwaves through the industry. This isn't just about moving jobs. It's about challenging the very foundation of Trump's economic agenda. For decades, Ford has been synonymous with American labor and innovation. It was a brand built in America, by Americans, for Americans. But as global competition in the EV market intensified, Ford executives felt they had no choice but to prioritize survival over patriotism. With soaring production costs, supply chain issues, and a declining demand for EVs, Ford's leadership decided to move manufacturing abroad, where labor is cheaper and access to key battery materials is more reliable. The problem? This move directly undermines Trump's America First policies, sparking instant backlash from the White House, labor union, and consumers. Trump has long positioned himself as the champion of U.S. manufacturing, and Ford's decision to offshore EV production has now put the company in his crosshairs. The decision is also a political minefield. Ford isn't just making a business move, it's challenging the U.S. government's stance on domestic manufacturing. But here's the real question. Did Ford just betray American workers to save its bottom line? Or is this a necessary step for the company's survival in a brutal global market? As the dust settles, the backlash is only getting stronger, and no one is angrier than Donald Trump. Trump's response: declaring war on Ford. If Ford thought it could quietly shift EV production overseas without consequences, it miscalculated badly. Trump responded almost immediately, launching a full-scale attack on Ford's leadership, branding their decision as corporate betrayal at its worst. At his latest rally, Trump blasted Ford's executives, accusing them of selling out American workers and prioritizing foreign interests over national prosperity. Trump's White House isn't just talking, it's already taking action. According to reports, officials are considering new tariffs and penalties targeting automakers that move jobs offshore. The administration is also exploring ways to strip Ford of federal EV incentives, potentially crippling the company's long-term plans. This move could put Ford at a massive disadvantage compared to competitors like General Motors and Tesla, who are keeping more of their production in the U.S. But Trump isn't stopping there. He has called for a nationwide boycott of Ford vehicles, urging his supporters to only buy American-made cars, not corporate sellouts. Conservative media outlets have picked up on the message, fueling the outrage and amplifying the pressure on Ford. At the same time, labor unions, including the powerful United Auto Workers, have joined Trump in condemning Ford's move, calling it a betrayal of American labor. The White House has made one thing clear: this is not just about Ford, it's about sending a message to the entire auto industry. Any company that dares to move American jobs overseas will face severe consequences. But is Ford willing to fight back, or will it be forced to retreat? That depends on what happens next. How this changes everything. Ford's decision isn't just shaking up American politics, it's having a massive financial impact on the entire auto industry. The moment Ford confirmed it was moving EV production overseas, investors panicked. Auto stocks across the board plummeted, wiping out over $302 billion in market value almost overnight. Wall Street analysts are calling this one of the biggest financial shocks to the auto industry in recent years. Ford's own stock took a massive hit, dropping double digits as fears of government retaliation and consumer boycotts spread. But the fallout didn't stop there. General Motors, Stellantis, and even Tesla saw their stock prices decline sharply as investors feared that new trade policies under Trump could disrupt the entire industry. And then came the real crisis, talk of a trade war. Reports suggest that Trump is preparing a wave of new tariffs on imported cars and EV components, a move that could completely change the economics of global auto production. If those tariffs go through, Ford's plan to cut costs by offshoring could backfire spectacularly. It might end up paying far more in tariffs than it would have saved in labor costs. But it's not just about the auto industry itself. The impact is spreading to the broader economy. Ford's decision to move production overseas has reignited fears of factory shutdowns and mass layoffs, putting even more pressure on an already struggling labor market. If other automakers follow Ford's lead, it could accelerate the decline of American manufacturing, further eroding the U.S. economy's industrial base. So far, Ford has tried to reassure investors that this is a long-term strategic move, but confidence is shaky, and if Ford doesn't respond decisively, it could lose more than just stock value. It could lose its status as an American icon. And as the financial chaos unfolds, the backlash is only getting stronger. The consumer backlash, a growing wave of backlash led by President Donald Trump, is putting one of America's most iconic automakers under intense pressure. Across social media, angry consumers are vowing to never buy a Ford again, and conservative influencers are urging their followers to switch to other brands that still manufacture. In the US, dealerships are already reporting a drop in foot traffic, as some loyal Ford customers say they refuse to support a company that moves American jobs overseas. For Ford, this could turn into a PR disaster unlike anything the company has ever faced. If enough consumers turn their backs on the brand, it could cripple sales and force Ford into a major crisis. Even Ford's most loyal customers, truck buyers, are reconsidering their options. Ford's best-selling vehicle, the F-Series pickup, has long been a symbol of blue-collar America. But many truck buyers are also strong Trump supporters, and some are now looking at alternative brands like Ram and Chevrolet as a protest against Ford's outsourcing. Meanwhile, some Ford dealers are furious, accusing the company of sabotaging its own sales network. Unlike Tesla, which sells directly to consumers, Ford still relies on dealerships to move its vehicles. But if Ford's decision leads to boycotts and slower sales, it could put hundreds of dealerships at risk, forcing them to cut jobs or even close their doors. Ford's move has set off a firestorm, from the White House to Wall Street to American consumers. But this battle is far from over. Ford still has one major challenge ahead. The EV industry is crashing. Shifting electric vehicle production overseas is not just a bold strategy. It is a crucial move for survival in an increasingly competitive market. The electric vehicle boom that once seemed unstoppable is now slowing down at an alarming rate. Consumers, who were once eager to switch to electric cars, are now hesitant due to rising interest rates, high sticker prices, and concerns about charging infrastructure. Ford saw the writing on the wall. The EV market is not growing fast enough to sustain the current level of production. Interest rates are a major factor in this slowdown. As borrowing costs rise, fewer consumers are willing to finance expensive electric vehicles, especially when gas-powered cars remain cheaper and more convenient. Despite government incentives, many car buyers are still hesitant to make the switch, fearing range anxiety and long charging times. Automakers like Ford are now stuck with high production costs for vehicles that are not selling as quickly as expected. Production costs have also soared due to inflation and supply chain disruption. Batteries, which make up a significant portion of an EV's cost, are becoming more expensive, not cheaper as once predicted. The materials needed for these batteries, lithium, cobalt, and nickel, are controlled by foreign suppliers, primarily China. This reliance on overseas supply chains makes it difficult for Ford to maintain competitive pricing while still producing vehicles in the United States. Ford's leadership knew that continuing to manufacture electric vehicles in America under these conditions would be unsustainable. They faced a choice: either cut costs drastically or risk being outcompeted by automakers that had already adapted to the changing landscape. This was not just about staying profitable, it was about avoiding financial disaster. The company realized that shifting production abroad was the only way to remain competitive in the EV race. But Ford's decision is not just about lower labor costs. It is about securing the materials needed to survive in the evolving auto industry. And that brings us to Ford's real strategy, one that goes beyond simple cost cutting. Ford's secret strategy. By shifting production overseas, Ford is securing direct access to cheaper battery components. Manufacturing vehicles closer to the source of materials reduces transportation costs, avoids tariffs, and ensures a more stable supply of key parts. Instead of relying on American-made batteries, which are still far more expensive, Ford can integrate Chinese and South Korean battery technology at a lower cost, making its vehicles more competitive in the global market. This is not the first time an automaker has prioritized raw material access over national loyalty. Toyota, Volkswagen, and even Tesla have formed partnerships with Chinese suppliers to ensure access to affordable battery technology. Ford is now following a similar strategy, not because it wants to, but because it must. The alternative is losing the battle for cost-effective EV production. But this decision comes at a steep price. Ford's move directly contradicts Trump's America First agenda, making it a political lightning rod. It also infuriates the powerful United Auto Workers Union, setting the stage for one of the biggest labor battles in auto industry history, the UAW's revenge. The next massive strike, the UAW has a long history of fighting back against outsourcing and job losses. Just last year, the union successfully secured record-breaking contracts from Ford, General Motors, and Stellantis after an aggressive strike that forced automakers to raise wages and improve benefits. Now, Ford's decision to shift EV production overseas is seen as a direct betrayal of that agreement. Union leaders have already signaled that major strikes could be on the horizon. If Ford does not reverse course, workers at U.S. plants could walk out, shutting down production and further damaging the company's financial standing. The union is also working with lawmakers to pressure Ford into keeping jobs in America, potentially influencing government policy that could penalize automakers moving jobs overseas. Beyond just labor strikes, public perception is turning against Ford. The UAW is not just a group of factory workers. It represents millions of middle-class Americans who vote, spend money on new cars, and influence the economy. If Ford is seen as turning its back on American workers, the boycott movement could gain even more traction, cutting into sales and damaging the company's long-term brand reputation. But while the UAW is gearing up for a fight, Ford's competitors are watching closely, and some of them see this as the perfect opportunity to gain market share. America's auto giants react. Will Tesla, GM, or Toyota take advantage? Ford's decision to shift EV production overseas is not just about its own survival, it is about how the entire auto industry will respond. While Ford stumbles, its biggest rivals, Tesla, General Motors, and Toyota, are taking advantage of the chaos. Tesla, for example, has doubled down on American manufacturing, using Ford's controversy as a selling point. Elon Musk has publicly criticized automakers that move jobs overseas, positioning Tesla as the only true made-in-America EV brand. Tesla's factory expansions in Texas and California send a clear message. While Ford is outsourcing, Tesla is staying loyal to American workers. General Motors, on the other hand, is playing it safe. The company has been more cautious about its EV expansion, focusing on hybrid technology and gas-powered vehicles in response to slowing electric vehicle demand. While Ford is making a massive gamble, GM is waiting to see how the market reacts before committing to any drastic changes. If Ford's move backfires, GM could emerge as the biggest winner. Toyota, a global powerhouse in both EVs and hybrids, is quietly capitalizing on Ford's misstep. The company has long been skeptical about going all in on EVs, instead investing heavily in hybrid technology. Now, with Ford facing backlash and Tesla taking the spotlight, Toyota looks even smarter for its cautious approach. Toyota has continued to invest in U.S. manufacturing, while keeping an international strategy flexible enough to adapt to changing market conditions. Trump's promise to revive American manufacturing is being put to the ultimate test. The Ford controversy is no longer just about one company making a business decision. It is about whether the entire U.S. auto industry can survive in an era of global competition, rising costs, and shifting consumer demands. And now all eyes are on the White House, waiting to see how Trump will respond. Trump's next move: will he punish Ford? Donald Trump is not one to back down from a fight, especially when it comes to protecting American jobs. Since Ford's announcement, he has already issued strong warnings against automakers that move production overseas. But talking is one thing, taking action is another. Now the question is, how far is Trump willing to go to punish Ford? One of the most likely weapons in Trump's arsenal is tariffs. During his first presidency, he imposed steep tariffs on imported steel and aluminum, making it more expensive for automakers to rely on foreign materials. He could take a similar approach now, slapping new tariffs on vehicles built overseas and imported into the U.S. This would directly target Ford's profits, forcing them to rethink their decision. But tariffs alone may not be enough. Trump's administration is also considering pulling federal incentives for Ford's electric vehicles. Under the previous administration, federal subsidies were offered to encourage Americans to buy EVs. If those incentives are revoked, Ford's EVs would become much less affordable, making it even harder for the company to sell its vehicles in the U.S. market. However, these moves come with risks. If Trump makes Ford an example, will it push the entire auto industry to resist? Automakers rely on predictable government policies to plan their strategies, and sudden changes could create chaos in an already struggling market. General Motors, Stellantis, and Toyota are all closely watching this battle. If Trump cracks down too hard, it could push them to fight back politically, creating a rift between the administration and the entire industry. This is no longer just a business dispute. It has escalated into a full-blown political war. If Trump follows through on his threats, he could change the course of the U.S. auto industry forever. But if he fails to stop Ford, it could signal that America's manufacturing future is already slipping away. Will Ford's decision reshape America's auto industry? At the heart of this battle lies a fundamental question. What is the future of American-made cars? This debate is not just about Ford versus Trump. It is about whether the entire industry is shifting away from domestic production and what that means for the future of U.S. auto manufacturing. The previous administration pushed hard for EV incentives, pouring billions into subsidies, charging infrastructure, and research grants. But Trump's policies are reversing course, focusing instead on protecting traditional manufacturing jobs. This has left automakers in a difficult position. Do they continue investing in EVs, or do they shift their focus back to gas-powered cars? Ford's decision to outsource EV production has added fuel to the fire. If one of the biggest automakers in the country is moving production abroad, what does that say about the state of the U.S. auto industry? It suggests that American companies simply cannot compete in the EV race without relying on foreign labor and resources. But Trump's response could force a major industry-wide shift. If he imposes strict penalties on companies that offshore production, automakers may rethink their strategies. This could lead to a resurgence of gas-powered vehicles, as EVs become too politically and financially complicated to manufacture. If this happens, the U.S. could fall even further behind in the global EV race. While China and Europe are aggressively expanding their EV markets, America could find itself stuck in the past, relying on outdated technology and losing market share to foreign competitors. What happens next could determine whether the U.S. remains a major player in the auto industry, or if it surrenders the future to global competitors. The dealer problem. Is Ford trying to kill its own sales network? Amidst all the political chaos, Ford might be making an even bigger internal move, one that threatens thousands of dealerships across the country. If Ford fully embraces direct sales, it could eliminate the middlemen, allowing them to control pricing, inventory, and customer relationships without relying on third-party dealers. But this move could also trigger massive resistance from dealership owners, many of whom are already struggling with shrinking profit margins. This could lead to a major industry fight, one where dealerships lobby against Ford, trying to pass laws that protect their business model. Many states have already banned direct-to-consumer car sales, specifically to stop Tesla from bypassing dealerships. If Ford tries to go down this road, it could set off a legal and political showdown that makes the Trump controversy seem small in comparison. The real question is Ford preparing for an EV future without dealerships? If they are, this could be the biggest transformation in the car buying experience since the rise of online shopping. But if they miscalculate, it could alienate their own loyal dealer network, further damaging their brand reputation. Ford is playing a high-stakes game, and the consequences of their decisions are just starting to unfold. As the battle with Trump intensifies, another fight is brewing, one that could change the way cars are sold in America forever. The last time this happened, what automakers can learn from the past. Ford's decision to move electric vehicle production overseas is not the first time an American automaker has outsourced to cut costs. In fact, history is full of examples where auto companies have attempted similar strategies, some with disastrous results. General Motors and Chrysler both tried shifting production abroad in the past, hoping to remain competitive in a rapidly changing market. But did it work? In the early 2000s, General Motors began offshoring some of its manufacturing to Mexico and China to reduce labor costs. The company believed that producing cars in lower-cost regions would allow it to price vehicles more competitively and boost profit margins. However, this strategy backfired when quality control issues arose, leading to expensive recalls and damage to the brand's reputation. Additionally, Outsourcing did not prevent General Motors from declaring bankruptcy in 2009, proving that cost-cutting alone is not a sustainable solution when consumer demand is shifting. Chrysler faced a similar challenge. In an effort to stay afloat, it outsourced production of some models to Canada and Mexico. However, when the 2008 financial crisis hit, the company found itself unable to recover, despite its outsourcing efforts. Ultimately, Chrysler had to be bailed out by the U.S. government. The lesson? Outsourcing alone cannot save an automaker from poor decision-making, market shifts, or financial downturns. As history shows, automakers that fail to anticipate public perception and government intervention often suffer the most. If Ford cannot justify its move convincingly, it may end up like General Motors and Chrysler, forced to reverse course at great cost. The fall of Pontiac and Saturn. Could Ford be next? Should consumer backlash intensify, it could trigger a domino effect, jeopardizing specific models and potentially entire brands. This would not be the first time an automaker miscalculated its market position and paid the price with the death of a brand. Take Pontiac and Saturn, two former giants under the General Motors umbrella. Pontiac, known for its muscle cars, and Saturn, a brand that promised innovation and affordability, were once thriving. But when General Motors faced financial trouble, both brands were abruptly discontinued, leaving dealerships, suppliers, and customers in the lurch. One of the biggest issues was inventory. When General Motors announced it was killing Pontiac and Saturn, thousands of unsold vehicles flooded the market. Dealerships slashed prices, but even with deep discounts, some models sat for months, depreciating rapidly. The situation damaged General Motors' overall reputation. Customers began questioning whether other brands under the company, like Buick and Cadillac, could be next. Ford now faces a similar risk. If public trust in the company weakens, some of its struggling models could be phased out. The Ford Escape and Edge, for example, have already faced declining sales as consumer preferences shift toward electric vehicles and hybrids. If Ford's move is seen as a betrayal of American manufacturing, it is not just political. It could be financially catastrophic. The moment customers believe an automaker is no longer who they thought it was, sales can plummet. Pontiac and Saturn never recovered from that mistake. Will Ford be next? Is Ford handing over the future of EVs? While Ford is struggling to justify its decision, China's automakers are seizing the moment. Brands like BYD, NIO, and XPeng are not just catching up, they are dominating the global EV market. If Ford's outsourcing move backfires, it may not just lose ground, it may hand over the future of EVs to China on a silver platter. Chinese automakers are already outselling Tesla in key markets, and Ford's decision to move production overseas could play directly into their hands. By shifting production to cheaper locations, Ford acknowledges that it cannot compete on costs within the United States. But China has already mastered this game. They produce electric vehicles at a fraction of the cost and are quickly expanding into Europe, South America, and even the US market. BYD, backed by Warren Buffett, has already overtaken Tesla in global EV sales. Their aggressive expansion into affordable electric cars is a direct threat to Ford's survival. While Ford is fighting political battles, China is advancing its dominance. If Ford becomes reliant on foreign production and supply chains, it could end up in a position where China controls its fate. Another concern is China's grip on battery production. The vast majority of lithium-ion battery materials are processed in China, meaning Ford's move could make it even more dependent on Chinese suppliers. In a geopolitical climate where tensions between the US and China are already high, this could be an unstoppable disaster. Ford just made its move, but was it a genius strategy or the biggest mistake in its history? With Trump pushing back and China gaining ground, the future of Ford and the entire US auto industry hangs in the balance. What do you think? Did Ford just secure its survival, or did it seal its fate? Drop a comment below and let's discuss. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.